Welcome to the Nova Wealth Show. I am your host, Amy Novakovich.
And I'm Jim Novakovich. We're a husband and wife team and co-founders of Nova Wealth Management.
We also teach you how to build wealth, advise you how to keep it, and how not to get taken advantage of. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nova Wealth Show. And if you're watching this on Facebook, this is Finance Friday. It's Happy Friday. It is actually Friday. We're doing this just a little bit early today, but I'm Amy Novakovich, certified financial planner and CEO of Nova Wealth Management. This is the show where we transform your relationship with your money by giving you the information you need to grow and protect your wealth. Follow us on Twitter at Nova Wealth Management, on Instagram, YouTube. You can go to our website, novawealthmanagement.com. Today, this is something super different. So I know we always bring it back to money and finances and business, but I am so fortunate to have Rene Banglesdorf. She is the CEO of her own company where she buys and sells private jets. This is so cool. So we're going to talk about just the airline industry, business all around the world, what she's been through, because what she has been through has taken her to a place where she now motivates. She's an author to just get women, all of us have to stick together, to get women up in business and promoted. Rene, thank you so much for being here with me. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, I am so happy to be here. This is an honor and a thrill, and I can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about.
I know, we'll see where it goes. God knows where, between the two of us, where it will go. But first, I want to have you say where people can find your website and look you up, because sometimes I tend to forget that towards the end. And so I want to get that out of the way now. Just go through like your website, your social media and everything so people know where to contact you.
My website is renebanglesdorf.com, and it's R-E-N-E Bangles, BANGLESDORF.com. You can also find my business website at wepush10.com, and there is a story behind that.
Just like there is behind your name,
of course.
The name of the company, yes.
Of course. And then on social media, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, all at Rene Banglesdorf.
Perfect. So you are a mother of two. You have been in corporate America. You have been through so much. Like, how did you get here? Like, tell us just a little bit about your story. Tell everybody about how you got here.
Oh my gosh. It's a little bit of a crazy story because I dropped out of college to start a family and then was a stay-at-home mom for years. And I got back in a little bit, kind of touched on journalism and marketing as a freelancer. I'd work here and there a little bit. And then 11 years ago, my husband and I decided to start our own business buying and selling planes. And it wasn't just out of the blue. He was actually doing that for what's now a competitor of ours. But it was an opportunity for both of us to work together and build our own legacy.
You wanted to work with your spouse?
I signed up. No, here's the story with that, because I signed up to help out. Like, I was going to work a couple hours a day when our kids were in school, because they were 13 and 16 years old. These are really important times.
Right.
And then one of our clients who worked for Lockheed Martin, which, you know, you're going to say that's an influential company, said,
yes,
gosh, you should be woman-owned. You should be certified as a woman-owned company so that we can do more business with you. And of course, you know, I'm going to take one for the team and say, okay, I'll take 1% more.
So that we can do more business with you? What did she mean by that?
Well,
so because you're women owned, all of a sudden they can do more business with you?
Well, because they do business with the government, and sometimes government RFPs require a minority owned company as one of their subcontractors. So a percentage of that RFP has to go to a minority owned, a woman owned, a veteran owned company in order for them to win the RFP. There are incentives for that to win the business. So they're like, we can just buy more planes from you if you get certified as a woman owned company. So Kurt's like, okay, he signed over 1%. I'm now 51%. He's 49%. And we applied for this certification and we're denied. Because in order to be certified, you have to be the boss. So I had to have the highest title, the highest compensation. Nobody could have firing authority over me. I had to have all this stuff that showed that I was the
Not just
head
working
officer.
part-time, couple hours a day type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I took the title, I took the compensation, and I probably spent 5 years growing into that role. You work
Yeah.
with your husband,
Yes.
you know, switching command, especially when you switch it back and forth every time you go home,
That's so
is
tough.
is difficult. And there
Yeah.
were growing pains.
For sure. Yeah. Pressure on the marriage, on home. I mean, you have two teenagers. I mean, it's just nuts. So like some of your clients, like you, the transition that I know I had to go through from being like in corporate America to then being my own business owner was how you present yourself, like the confidence that you present yourself to like a Lockheed Martin, or, you know, like you're used to just being like one of a team. And then all of a sudden you're the person in the forefront, like winning the business. That takes time grooming somebody to actually have that confidence. And I think that's what you teach women about too. Like when you speak and when you wrote your book, like, you know, talking about being mediocre. I think that women are sometimes scared to step out of that, you know?
Absolutely. It takes a lot of guts, and it takes a willingness to fall on your face and get back up again and put yourself in the exact same position again, knowing you might fall on your face again. And you really just have to say, you know what, I can't fail. Like
Yeah.
I can keep trying, but failure is not an option. And when you can't quit because you own 51% of the company, you put yourself in a place where you're like, okay, well, I can't just walk away from this. I'm going to have to figure it out. And
Yeah.
having that attitude or putting yourself in that position so that you're forced to have that attitude sometimes helps.
Well, you know, I think of it sometimes as like comparable to parenting, because no matter what you do, you have to keep parenting. Like whether you think you're doing the right or wrong thing, it doesn't matter, because tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to still have to parent. You know, like their life goes on, their life transitions, they become adults, but you're still parenting. Like it just never ends. You don't have a choice but to parent. Like even when we get in our worst times, like sometimes obviously I'm sick, or, you know, and you want to just lay down and die. And yet you have two toddlers tugging on you. Like you can't, like sometimes you just don't have an option. And I think of it sometimes like that. Like you have to have that mentality that you don't have an option. Like you have to keep going. And that's so great. And one of
Right.
the other things, or go ahead.
I was just going to say that's one thing that we have the luxury of changing, especially with the job market as tight as it is right now.
Yeah.
I was at a conference earlier this week, and one of the women was talking about every 18 months she considers changing jobs. And I was like, wow, sometimes I wish I had that luxury. However, I've become strong and I've had the ability to flourish because I've stuck things out and
Right.
haven't made things temporary in my life. And, you know, that
That's good.
plays over into everything. It plays into your marriage. It plays into your
Definitely.
relationships with your parents and your kids and all sorts of other things.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a trend that most people should stick with. If you're just joining us on Facebook anyway, on our live, this is Rene Banglesdorf. We're just talking all things business, but most importantly, we're going to get into right now aviation. Her study is just buying and selling jets, which is so cool. She has so many cool stories, but we're just kind of talking about how she got to this point. But when you are in business and you're picking your clients, and you are one of, would you say, two women in the world that really own their companies doing this? That
Right?
you know of,
That's
right?
right. There are a handful of us. I would say maybe 20 or so of us in the world that are women that do this or have been doing it for any amount of time. As far as I know, and I could have missed one here or there, but there are only two of us that own our own company doing
So
this.
when you say like do this, so like for instance, I told you about somebody that I knew that was a salesperson for a large jet company. Like it's just mostly male dominant, right? Is that what you're saying? Like it's just mostly males selling those jets?
99%. And one of the reasons for that is because it's a very unregulated industry. So, in order to be a financial advisor, you had to take some tests, right? You had to take some classes, you had to learn some stuff.
Right.
We don't have to. You could you could say, hey, I'm a private jet salesman or a private jet saleswoman, and you can sell jets. There's no certification. There's no regulation around the sale of the actual asset. Lots of regulations with the FAA and import, export, and Patriot Act and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff that you face
But
as
there's
well.
no certification.
None. So it makes it so that you really have to do this with a lot of grit and a lot of grace.
How did you get into that?
Well, my husband pulled me in, right? He decided that he wanted to sell big ticket items. And he decided that he thought it would be great if I came along and helped because our skill sets complement each other. I'm a detail
You really didn't get
person.
into it like just for like, oh, I have a passion for aviation. Like you just got, okay. Yeah, that's so
No,
crazy.
I do now. I absolutely love
Right.
aviation
Well, and
now.
you said
but
your whole family's in aviation. Like your daughter's going to
Absolutely.
flight school. Like everybody is passionate about it now.
Yeah,
So how
that's
did
right.
you learn about the jets? Like, so did you just like, because a lot of people don't enter into a career because they do feel like they don't know enough. Or like I hear all the time, I'm just not good with money, or I don't know enough about money, or you're speaking a foreign language to me. You don't know, I don't know enough to even understand what you're saying. And I can imagine, like, if you got pulled in, like, did you have to learn about the planes? Like, you had to kind of self-teach then. If there's
Oh
no
yeah.
certification.
There's a lot. And on a private jet, there are say between 1 million and 2 million parts. And some of them are rivets hold things together, and there are a lot of those, but there are
Right.
so many parts that you have no idea what they do. And I still learn something new every day when I'm doing this. So you have to be willing to ask a lot of questions. You have to read a lot, and you really have to be open to pursuing learning every day. And that's not just for what I do, that's for anyone, anywhere, because technology changes so fast. There's no way what you learned in school is going to be enough to sustain you in your career.
Right. So when you're selling, and do you sell mostly to commercial clients, or you had mentioned in one of your speeches that it's mostly small and mid-sized business owners actually. So tell us a little bit about the market. Like let's switch a little bit gears and start talking about your actual business. So what would you say, I don't even know the right question to ask, but what would you say is is there like a number one product that you sell, or is there just a whole array, so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's a little bit about buying a house, right? If you pick the right house for the family, and with a plane, you pick the right plane for the mission and budget for that client.
So
And
you can
in
sell like multiple brands. Is that what you're saying? Like you kind of,
yes,
okay.
I'm a broker.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I represent equally buyers and sellers.
That's
And then I sell all sorts of different brands. So Gulfstreams, you and I talked about
yeah.
before, Learjets, King Airs, helicopters. We've sold all sorts of different
Wow.
kinds of planes, aircraft over the years. And
I've
so
never even sat back and thought about it like that there's a plane broker. I've never even, do you know what I mean?
that's me.
But you're right. Like it is a big purchase. It's sometimes more than a house. So a lot of times more.
Right. Most of the time. Yeah. Unless you have a really amazing house. So we sell things from just under $1 million to 60 or 65 million.
Wow, that is crazy. So, uh, do you sell only in the US or is it worldwide? How do you find your clients? My gosh, I just have so many questions like spinning through my head. How do you
It's
find your clients?
worldwide. It is worldwide. We've sold in 11 years, we've sold planes, bought or sold in 43 different countries on 6 continents. Um, Usually our business is 50% domestic and 50% international.
Okay.
Right now, it's more domestic because the dollar's really strong.
Right.
And there's some political upheaval with Brexit in Europe that's kind of making people hesitant to buy over there. There are some trade conundrums going on with China
There is?
that have maybe slowed down some purchasing over there. So there are things, external factors, but the economy is doing so well in the US right now that our sweet spot, which is small and mid-sized business owners, are making business expansion plans right now. And, I'm sure you advise on taxes, or at least tell people that they need to get advice on taxes.
Yes.
And something that President Trump and the Congress did in 2017 has a huge impact on my business right now.
Okay.
And that's that it's usually when bonus depreciation comes into play for equipment purchases, which it did under President Bush and under President Obama. It's bonus depreciation for new equipment. But what this tax reform bill did was say that there's bonus depreciation. So you can write off in the first year business purchase of new or pre-owned equipment. So if you own a small business and you need a plane to get between 2 or 3 different plants, and you spend $4 million on a plane, you can write 100% of that off this year.
In year one.
In year one.
Just have a client tell me about this. And I was like, that sounds too good to be true, because he went out and he said he bought a plane for tax purposes. I'm like, give me a break. You bought a plane for tax purposes. Okay, so let's talk about, the cost of the plane. Let's talk about your tax write-off. And I was doing the numbers. I was like, that's amazing. How can you write off that much? I talked to his accountant. I'm like, I need to talk to your accountant. That's crazy.
Right. No, it's true. And that's good through 2023.
Right.
So that you'll be able to write off 100% of it in the first year if you want to. Some of our clients still choose to write it off over a 5-year or 7-year period, because that's better for their business tax planning. You don't have to write it off in the first year.
Of course, it depends on the income in the first year, right?
If you have a windfall contract signed and you're expanding your business rapidly, it may be good to write it off in that first year.
Yes, excellent. So when you bring clients together and you say, okay, this plane makes most sense for this client, does your relationship continue with the clients? Is it more of a one-time transaction? With real estate, sometimes the broker stays involved because people buy and sell homes, a lot. But I guess it just depends on the client, right? But are you building relationships? You're just like any other business owner. Well, you're building relationships, right?
Of course. And most of our best clients come from word of mouth. So it does make a lot of sense to, even if that person may only buy a plane every 7 to 10 years, as soon as you know that I own a plane, if you're thinking about buying a plane, you're going to ask me about that. And so there's lots of word of mouth referral that goes on, because there's not a ton of information available on how to buy or sell your plane.
No. And so if somebody wants to get into this business, let's say there's a woman watching and she's like, I would be so interested in doing this. Where do they even start? You know what I mean? How do they, is there a aviation broker association, or is there,
No, there's not. I mean, you really have to target a company that you want to work for and somehow start working for that company. I will say that it's a super long sales cycle, and you very much start at the bottom. So you start at almost a poverty level salary, and most people, it takes 6 to 12 months to get their first sale that they're even a part of. And so most people start out doing analysis or research at, maybe $30,000 a year plus some sort of commission or bonuses. You start.
But that's how you learn the business. You almost have to do that in order to be successful. That's just the stepping stone that, no matter whether male or female, that you just have to do sometimes to learn the ropes,
Right.
So speaking of male and female, so let's talk a little bit about just your book, especially, and the speeches that you do, and you talk about, not being mediocre and helping women get out of that mediocre plane and stepping up to either be a business owner or getting promoted, or, let's talk a little bit about that. So for those women listening, Rene actually does speak a lot and writes about just empowering women and getting us to stick together and allowing women to kind of step out of the status quo. So Rene, why don't you talk a little bit about when you're talking to, first of all, do you consult with women on a one-on-one basis, or it's more of a, you speak about it?
I don't. I do have some people that I mentor informally, and a couple formally. And then I have written I have 2 books. Actually, I have a new one that just came out last month. So my first one is called Crushing Mediocrity.
Right.
And then the newest one is called Stand Up: How to Flourish When the Odds Are Stacked Against You.
Perfect.
So the first one I wrote with a friend of mine who's in the automotive industry, and we discovered, as you and I discovered when we were talking earlier, that the obstacles that women face are the same in male-dominated industries. Largely, it's the same unconscious bias.
The board. Yeah.
Right. It's the same. You really need to be assertive. You can't back down. You can't give up. You have to stick things out. Right. So those things go across all male-dominated industries. And then in Stand Up, my publisher said, hey, I really want to know what makes you tick. I want to know when you failed, what that looked like. Like, what did your life look like when you lost all that money organizing helicopter shuttle for the Formula One race? And I'm like, girl, I didn't get out of bed for 3 days. I didn't even take my pajamas off. I'm not sure I brushed my teeth. I can't remember. And she was like, yes, that's what I want to know. What does it look like in the nitty gritty of failing and getting back up?
Like in the depth of the valley.
Dealing with hypocrisy at work. Because golly, we're our own worst enemies, because, lots of women talk out of one side of their mouth about empowering women and then go stab them in the back when they get the chance because they're jealous. Right. And so how do we deal with that as women is something really important. There's been a ton of talk about sexual harassment at work in the last few years. And, how do you handle that? And how do you set yourself up so that you're not vulnerable to that? Because we can do things to safeguard ourselves, of course, to a large extent, or we can kind of let things slide and put ourselves in a position where now all of a sudden we're in a difficult place dealing with something like this. So
or you can let it define you. You can let it define you. Like, right. Go through something like that, and you can either sit and let it stress you out and let it prevent you from being better, or you can let it motivate you to be like, I want to get out of this position so it doesn't happen to me again. Or I want to, like you said, then put in some safeguards so this doesn't happen to me again. Or, you can let it motivate you to be better, to help more women, to, just be bigger than just the one problem that happened to you. I feel like that's sometimes we fall into that hole of just feeling like the victim, and then being the victim, and then getting depressed because we're the victim, and then, being isolated because we're a victim. And instead of, letting it make you stronger and helping other women, but sometimes that's just not women's personality, like, do you find that, like, when you're speaking, I would imagine, well, I know when I speak sometimes, and I told you a little bit about this, but like a lot of people will say, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, you're speaking another language to me. I'm just not good with money, or I don't understand what you're saying. And they let that discourage them instead of motivate them to learn more, to want more, to then help others, but some people just, it's not their personality. So how do you draw that fine line between, okay, it's just, this isn't their personality, and we have to find a different way to just make them be the best at what they're doing in their current role, or I want to push this person to the next level because they could be so much more. You don't want to push someone that could just be very content where they are. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And, I'm sure you're probably feeling the same way about this that I am. Those are not our people.
Right.
I mean, the people who just want to stay right where they are and they're complacent. Yes. Those aren't the people that you and I are talking to. Those are not our clients. The people that we surround ourselves with are the ones who want to, and it's the reason I titled the book Stand Up. Yeah. And standing up is taking a position. It's changing. It's taking a new position. Standing up. It's taking a position of leadership and a position of readiness. So when you're standing up, you're ready to make a change. You're ready to do something new for yourself or for people around you. And when we all stand up together, we find that we're not alone and we can actually be brave and do some things that we've never done before. And so that's what my goal is in speaking and in writing and in talking about these things is, come on, girls, let's stand up together. And Amy, there's so many things right now where we're saying, oh, well, if companies had the right culture and they had the right communication and they had this and this and this in their leadership, and if they really had a plan for diversity and inclusion, then we would have a better shot. And there's truth to that. You know, Best Buy finally tipped the scales where they're actually even on their board and their executive team, male and female. And that was a big deal. It was big news. And they've been purposeful about that. And I'm sure that it makes Best Buy an even better place to work.
Right.
But we have to do our part as women.
Yeah, it's not up to others. Yeah, it's up to us.
We can't just say, okay, you could pick me. No, we have to say, hey, I'm here. Yeah. I'm willing to take risks.
Pick me because
I'm willing to get out of my comfort zone. I'm willing to do what it takes to grow. And I'm willing to apply for a position that I might not be qualified for because I think I can get there with a little bit of help. Right. That's what standing up is about. And we have to do it as women.
Oh, that's so cool. Because you know what's so funny? I had a client say to me once, so especially not only coming up in the financial advisor world as a woman, because it's mostly men. At my prior firm, I was the only woman in all the advisors in South Florida. But I was young. So all being a woman and young and trying to convince these like retired executives, you know, these older men that you should allow me to plan your well-being, your financial well-being. Like he said to me once, because I said, you know, I was able to push out of that, you know, that women are too emotional to be in the market, to manage money, to help with planning, to, you know, help somebody versus, you know, staying at home, being a mom or working, you know, women are too emotional to do this. And I said, you know, I was able to push through that and I was able to own my own company. And he said something along the lines where, well, there's a lot of jobs that men don't want to do either. There's a lot of jobs that, you know, like women, mostly teachers are mostly women, or most, what was another one that he said? Something, you know, like daycare teachers are mostly women. Like there's just some jobs that men aren't a good fit either. And at first I remember being like kind of offended. And I remember thinking, wow, like the nerve of him saying something like that. And then after I think about it, I was like, that is truth. Like there is just some things that men are better at, and there's some things that women are better at. But I think the ultimate fundamental baseline that you are saying and that you are pointing out is that if you want something, you have to go get it.
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
Don't be defined by the world around you. Or is it a male dominated industry? Or is it a female dominated industry? Or am I qualified or am I not? Like, if you want it, go get it.
Well, the great thing about being a female in a very male-dominated industry is that when you walk in a room, you automatically stand out. You know, you're not.
That's so true. There's no doubt about that.
It's very difficult as a former severe introvert to make that move and stand out. But once you do and you realize like, hey, people are listening to me because I have something unique to offer, it really builds your confidence quickly. Like
you were an introvert?
Oh, super introvert. I talk about this in the book. My husband and I, when we were first married, we've been married 28 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. When we were first married, we would go to parties and I would leave crying because nobody talked to me at the party because I was like hiding in a corner behind a plant and he was the center of attention because he's a total extrovert. And I had to push myself out of that and say, you know what? If I want people to talk to me, I can take the first step.
Yeah.
And so it's built my confidence. So now when I take the Myers-Briggs test, I don't show up as an introvert anymore, even
So
though I
it
used
like
to be.
literally changed.
I've literally changed, but it's because I've forced myself to come out of my shell. And then I surround myself with people who are extroverts and pull me out of my shell as
But
well.
how did you force yourself to come out of your shell? Like, give us some examples.
So if I went to a trade show and I was at a cocktail party, I would introduce myself to somebody that I didn't know. And in fact, I would introduce myself to somebody that I didn't know, but that I knew was a leader in the industry. And being able to have that person acknowledge me was huge. This happened, we were in Geneva, my husband and I introduced myself to the head of lending for aviation lending for Bank of America. And he managed a $6 billion portfolio at the time. So that's not a, insignificant person in the industry.
No.
So I introduced myself to Michael and I invited him and his coworker to go to dinner with my husband and I that night. And he accepted. And I was like, oh my, okay. So I went back to the hotel and I'm like, hey, Kurt, we could meet with, I've got a dinner for us tonight with Bank of America. And he's like, oh, is it this guy? And this is like 3 rungs down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, because he had been
A
trying
little
to
higher up than that.
he had been trying to get in with that like 3rd string quarterback for a while. And I'm like, no, it's the boss. And he's like, well, is it like a big dinner? And I'm like, no, it's just the 4 of us. And he was like, how'd you get
How
that?
did you do that?
I'm like, I asked. And he was like, good for you. And so
well, not only that, because the next time you walk into a room and Michael knows you, and he's like, hey, Rene, everybody else is like turning and is like, oh, he knows her.
exactly.
It gives you cred, like not just getting a dinner with him, but like
Right.
every meeting you're in where he is there too, gives you instant credibility, and everybody wants to talk to you all the time. That was genius.
Yes. So, but it took a lot of guts and it paid off well. Now, there have been other people that I've done that with that, it didn't pay off with, or they're
Right.
like, oh, yeah, little darling.
All you need is one, really.
All you need is one. And then you gain more and more.
Right.
And so over the years, I've definitely gained more respect in the industry, but it took that one big ask that I was out on a limb. And that it builds your confidence. It helps you be better. And I was offering to take him to dinner. So it wasn't like, hey, I need something from you. It
Right.
was, I'd
What can
love
you
to
do
get
for
to
me?
know you a little bit better. Can I take you and your coworker to dinner with me and my husband? So it was completely appropriate. And we've become friends over the years. He does not work at Bank of America anymore. He's the CEO of an aircraft manufacturer, but still a good friend.
Still a good connection to have, especially in your business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to meet. That's like relationship 101, is that you don't walk up to somebody and you instantly start selling them. Like you build the relationship and you offer them something first before asking for something. That's great. Like that was super cool. Anything else you want to tell our listeners that maybe we haven't touched on? I feel like, man, we've touched on your history, the aviation business, just your books, and talking about women rising up. Anything else that you want to give, maybe a word of encouragement or something just to the business people listening, or maybe they're not a business owner, but they've been wanting to get into something like that? Any last words?
Well, I would say one thing that we touched on, knowing that you have business owners and business people as your listeners in this, I think it's important to do just a super quick tutorial on private aviation. So I'll try to keep it brief, but there are a few companies that people have heard of, probably, or if they watch golf, they've seen it on golfer shirts, but Wheels Up is one of those. Wheels Up is a membership program, kind of you join like a country club, and then you pay per flight hour that you actually fly. So that is a charter membership. You can also do charter just kind of like you'd call a taxi, and you can book charter. And you're in South Florida. There are a ton of charter companies in
Oh
South
yeah,
Florida.
we get solicited by them all the time actually. They sound like a great deal. There's been several times where my husband comes in here and he's like, "We need to talk about this as much as we fly." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
It's amazing. And when
Great deals.
you start getting the business case for it, and if there are 4 of you going somewhere and you can get there and
Yeah.
back in 3 hours instead of spending 2 days traveling, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So Wheels Up is a membership. You can do charter. Charter is absolutely no commitment except for 1 flight. You can do fractional ownership, and that's like NetJets.
Okay.
There's also an option.
That's the one I think we've talked about before.
Yes. And then I sell the whole plane, but I consult with people on all of the other options as well, because everyone starts out with something smaller than buying a whole plane. So that's something that I do.
You're more of like an aviation consultant.
I do. And I actually do that usually free. Oh, shoot. I just said that out loud. I charge a lot to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm really passionate about people knowing that they can use private aviation to expand their business. And we have clients who have factories in like Albertville, Alabama, and there's no commercial service to there. They have to fly into Birmingham or Huntsville, which are not major markets anyway. So they're using a connection and then driving 2 hours.
Yeah.
Or if they have a plane at Albertville, then they can fly wherever they need to go and be back in the same day. And so
that's so true. Yeah.
There's so many benefits to it that people don't think about, because they think that it's just rich people, it's Fortune 500 companies, or it's celebrities. And really, this is an unbelievable stat, but 85% of the private planes owned in the United States are owned by small or mid-sized business
owners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's a good point, because I'm from a town, Boscobel, Wisconsin, and it's southwest corner of Wisconsin. And so you can fly into Milwaukee, which is a 3-hour drive, or you can fly into the cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and it's a 3-hour drive. Madison is only about an hour and 45 minutes away, but it's a super small airport anyway. So you wouldn't really fly into there unless you're going to have a layover, and then it's a long day of traveling. So it's like, but Boscobel has this little airport that private planes can fly into. So
right. So in the US, there are 500-ish airports that have commercial service. So, the feeder airlines for United or American fly into them, 500 of those. There are 5,000 in communities like the one in which you grew up.
Yes. And Naples has one here, a little airport, and there's all kinds of private jets and planes that fly into it too. Yeah.
Yes. In fact, my daughter has flown in there because she's doing cross countries, learning how to fly.
Oh, it's so cool. Well, thank you so much, Rene, for all the insight that you have given us. Again, ReneBanglesdorf.com is her website. If you have any reason to contact her, or you might become a client of hers, that would be a good time to contact her, just to ask her what might be most appropriate for you and your business. Thank you, Rene, so much for being here. I appreciate you. Have an awesome weekend. Happy Friday. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. And happy Mother's Day.
Oh, yes. Happy Mother's Day to you, too. I can't believe I forget that that's this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of kids to celebrate you, Mama.
That's why I forget, because my days all mesh together. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.